The mirror showed her alive, even after she was already dead. If you want the truth before it fractures, hit like and subscribe. A thin spring fog hung over Hawthorne Avenue when Detective Marcus Hale stepped out of an unmarked sedan at Ravenport House. The neighborhood was still waking. A garbage truck groaned somewhere down the block. A radio hummed behind closed windows, but at the iron gate, a small crowd had already formed. Tragedy traveled faster than morning. The door was opened by the house steward, Thomas Reed, his posture rigid, his voice worn thin. "This way, detective. It's upstairs." Hale followed him through a marble foyer and up a wide staircase that carried sound too easily. At the end of the second-floor corridor, a door stood ajar. Light spilled out, fractured, doubled, unstable. The mirror room earned its name without apology. Every wall was lined with tall, gold-edged mirrors. They multiplied the space until depth became meaningless. Movement echoed. Angles lied. Hale paused at the threshold, letting his eyes adjust, letting instinct do its work. On the floor near a vanity lay Vivian Rowe. She had fallen sideways, one hand still resting against the edge of the dressing table, fingers curled as if she had tried to steady herself. Her silk morning dress, pearl white with muted violet trim, was torn at the side. A single wound marked the fabric, clean, precise, real. "How long?" Hale asked quietly. The medical examiner, Dr. Alan Brooks, straightened. Between 7:40 and 7:50 a.m., the housemaid heard a cry. By the time she entered, Mrs. Rowe was already gone. No signs of struggle, none. The strike was sudden, close range, likely someone she didn't fear. Hale nodded once. On the vanity, silver brushes aligned with care, a perfume bottle overturned, its stopper cracked. Violet, sharp. One mirrored panel beside the table sat slightly misaligned, not broken, just wrong. He stepped closer. The mirrors repeated him endlessly. Dozens of Hales, all watching. Who else was in the house? He asked. Her husband, staff, and 3 guests who stayed overnight. "Bring me the maid." Lena Moore stood shaking near the doorway, early 20s. Pale, hands clenched too tightly. "I came up just after 7:30, she said. Mrs. Rowe was awake. She asked for coffee, said she planned to leave at 11:15. I was helping her choose jewelry when she sent me to fetch gloves from her bedroom. I was gone maybe 2 minutes. When I came back, she was on the floor. I thought she fainted, then I saw the blood." "You screamed?" "Yes, and Mr. Calder came running." Hale looked up. "Calder, the family attorney. He's staying on the first floor." "Interesting." As Reed cleared his throat softly, Hale took one last look around the room. Light fractured everywhere. Truth did not. Downstairs, Edward Rowe waited in the study, composed, exhausted, hollowed out by shock. He claimed he'd seen his wife alive at 7:35, said she seemed calm. Breakfast followed. Then the scream. 3 guests, 1 death. A room built on illusion. As Hale turned to leave, something caught his eye near the study door. A small shard of glass, gold-edged, mirror glass. He slipped it into an evidence sleeve and glanced back toward the staircase, where reflections still moved like ghosts above. Somewhere in that room, someone had learned how to disappear while standing in plain sight. And Hale intended to learn who. The drawing room at Raventon House had the stillness of a place that no longer trusted itself. Curtains were drawn halfway, muting the morning light, and the air smelled faintly of old paper and cooling tea. Detective Marcus Hale stood near the fireplace, notebook closed in his hand, watching the 3 guests seated before him. None spoke. Silence did enough damage on its own. "We'll keep this efficient," Hale said, calm, neutral, corporate. "Between 7:30 and 8 o'clock a.m. where you were, what you heard, and what you touched. Details matter." He turned first to Claire Whitmore. She was in her early 40s, dressed in conservative gray, hands folded with deliberate precision. Vivian Rowe's longtime companion. Administrative support, social coordination, private correspondence. The kind of role that knew everything and owned nothing. "I was in my sitting room," Claire said, "reading. Mrs. Rowe didn't usually need me in the mornings unless she planned an event. I heard a scream and went upstairs immediately." You'd been with her how long? Almost 6 years. And your relationship? Professional. Respectful, a clean answer, too clean. Any tension lately? Hale asked. A pause, brief but measurable. She was under stress. That happens in households like this. Hale noted it. Misdirection lived in euphemisms. Next came Jonathan Calder, the attorney, late 40s, crisp suit, glasses wiped too often. I was reviewing documents in my room on the first floor, Calder said. I heard the scream and rushed up. You arrived quickly, Hale replied. Your room is at the back of the house. Calder adjusted his cuff. Coincidence, I was already in the hall. Coincidence was not a defense. Hale wrote nothing, that mattered more. You handled Mrs. Rowe's legal affairs. Yes, estate planning. Trusts. Any recent changes? Calder hesitated, long enough to be expensive. She asked questions, nothing finalized. Hale let the silence do its work, then turned. Evan Mercer, 32, artist, guest. Uneasy posture, fingers marked faintly with charcoal. Last night? Hale asked. She retired around 10:20, Mercer said. I stayed in the music room with the others until maybe 10:50, then went upstairs. Your room? Above the study. Hale looked up, mentally placing him under the mirror room. You hear anything this morning? Mercer frowned. I woke suddenly, around 7:45, thought I heard something fall, not a scream, just impact. Impact. Hale underlined the word in his mind. The interviews ended without drama. No confessions, no breaks, only stress fractures. As the guests dispersed, Hale stopped Calder near the door. One more thing, he said. You own a portable typewriter? Calder blinked. Yes. For drafting. Don't move it. Calder didn't ask why. Upstairs, Hale returned to the mirror room alone. The body had been removed. The absence was louder than her presence had been. The mirrors still reflected everything, furniture, light, Hale himself, but no longer explained it. He studied the vanity again. A folded note lay half hidden beneath a brush. Hale read it once, then again. This cannot continue. He is watching, I am ending it. Unsigned, handwritten, Vivian's hand. An ending always created risk. He checked the misaligned mirror panel again, pressed lightly. It shifted, barely, but enough. Behind him, a sound, soft footfall. Claire Whitmore stood in the doorway, pale but controlled. Detective, she said. Is it very bad? Hale looked at her reflection first, then at her. It's precise, he replied, which usually means personal. Her fingers tightened around the doorframe, just for a second. As she left, Hale made a final note. Someone in this house knew the mirrors. Someone knew when Vivian would be alone. And someone believed reflection was protection. They were wrong. By mid-afternoon, Raventon House had settled into a disciplined quiet, the kind that came not from peace but from restraint. Doors remained closed. Footsteps were measured. Even the clock seemed reluctant to mark time too loudly. Detective Marcus Hale returned to the mirror room alone. The space felt smaller without the body, though the mirrors still insisted on infinity. Light entered at a shallow angle now, sliding across gold frames and breaking into thin bands that cut the room into fragments. Hale moved slowly, not as an intruder, but as someone listening for what the room was still willing to say. He examined the vanity first. A silver comb lay partly beneath a folded scarf. The perfume bottle had been set upright, but its cracked stopper remained. Someone had tidied, not carefully but instinctively, a reflex after shock. Or guilt. Hale crouched near the misaligned mirror panel again. He pressed firmer this time. A faint hollow sound answered back, not a wall, a space. He stepped away, scanning the rest of the room. The mirrors were not uniform. Most were fixed flush. Two had decorative frames bolted directly into the plaster. But one, the one beside the vanity, sat differently. Its edge bore faint wear, barely visible unless you knew to look. Someone had touched it often. A knock sounded behind him. "Sir," said Officer Daniel Frost, young, alert. "We finished checking the study. And the display cabinet is intact. Antique blades, ceremonial knives, keepsakes. But one slot's empty." "What kind?" "Ivory handle, short blade, balanced." Hale nodded. "When was it last accounted for?" House steward says weeks ago, but no inventory since. Convenient. And Mr. Rowe, in his room. Cooperative. Says he hasn't opened the cabinet in months. Hale dismissed Frost and turned back to the mirror. He slipped a thin tool from his coat and gently worked it into the seam. The panel resisted, then shifted inward by a fraction. Enough. Behind it lay a shallow recess. Dust lined the interior except for one disturbed strip where something long and wrapped had recently rested. At the bottom, a torn ribbon, violet silk. Hale did not touch it. He closed the panel again exactly as it had been and straightened. This was not panic hiding. This was familiarity. Downstairs, Claire Whitmore sat in the breakfast room, her tea untouched. She looked up as Hale entered, schooling her expression into calm. "You were close to Mrs. Rowe," Hale said, sitting opposite her. "Closer than most." "I managed her life," Claire replied. "Someone had to." "Did she mention changing her estate recently?" A pause, then, "She said she was reconsidering certain arrangements." "Did she say why?" Claire's gaze shifted not away but inward. "She felt exposed." "By whom?" "She didn't say." Hale leaned back. "Did she receive letters?" Claire's fingers tightened around the teacup. "One, anonymous, cruel, accusatory. Where is it?" "She destroyed it." Hale stood. "Thank you." In the upstairs guest room, Evan Mercer paced between unfinished sketches. Vivian's face stared back at Hale from half a dozen canvases, elegant, distant, amused. "She ended it," Mercer said quietly when Hale showed him the note. "2 days ago. Said it wasn't safe anymore." "Did she say from whom?" "No, just that the mirrors made it easy to watch without being seen." That phrase stayed with Hale as he returned once more to the mirror room at dusk. He lowered the lights. The reflections deepened, shifted, multiplied until the room became a maze of presence and absence. Hale stepped to the exact spot where Vivian had fallen. From here, a figure entering through the side corridor would not appear in the primary reflection. Not immediately. Not if they knew the angles. A person could be standing beside her and still look alone. Hale stared at his own reflection, then counted how many appeared. Too many. Behind him, faintly visible on the inner edge of the mirror frame, were fingerprints. Not Vivian's. Larger, firmer, left-handed. Hale exhaled slowly. The mirrors had not just reflected the crime. They had helped commit it. Ravenport House tightened around itself as evening settled in. Lamps were lit early, shadows lengthened, and every sound carried too far through the corridors. Detective Marcus Hale stood once more inside the mirror room, this time with Sergeant Paul Avery, whose presence brought tools, procedure, and a necessary finality. "We lift the panels," Hale said. "Carefully. Start with the one by the vanity." Avery nodded and fixed a suction clamp to the glass. The mirror protested with a low creak as it eased forward. Cold air breathed out from behind it, stale and undisturbed. The recess was shallow but not empty. Dust marked a clean diagonal where something had been placed recently and removed. Older stains darkened the wood near the base. Not fresh, not accidental. "Someone's used this before," Avery murmured. "Yes," Hale said, "someone who designed it that way." They moved to the next panel. It resisted more fiercely. Avery worked a thin blade behind the frame. The glass shuddered. "Hold," Hale began. Too late. A sharp fracture ran through the panel like lightning. Not an explosion, a controlled failure. A triangle of glass slid free and shattered at their feet, scattering gold-edged shards across the floor. A cry sounded from the corridor. Hale raised his voice. "No one enters." With the tension released, the damaged panel tipped inward. The recess behind it was deeper than the first. Wrapped in a monogrammed linen towel lay an ivory-handled dagger. Avery froze. Hale drew it free with care. The blade had been wiped, but not well enough. Near the hilt, a crescent of dried red clung stubbornly in the groove. The towel smelled faintly of violet. Initials were stitched into one corner, VR. The opposite corner had been torn away. "There's more," Avery said quietly. He reached back into the recess and produced a velvet jewelry case. Empty. The satin interior bore the unmistakable impression of large stones, oval and heavy. "The ruby necklace," Hale said. Missing. At the doorway stood Claire Whitmore, pale, rigid, hands clenched in her skirt. Behind her hovered the house steward. Further back, Jonathan Calder watched with sharp, measuring eyes. "You're destroying her room," Claire said. "I'm letting it speak," Hale replied evenly. He turned to Calder. "You arrived upstairs quickly this morning. I told you I was in the hall, and you cut your hand." Calder glanced down. A fresh scratch marked his thumb, probably from broken glass. "The glass broke just now," Hale said. "Not this morning." Calder said nothing. Hale produced the small gilded shard found near the study door. "This was downstairs." "From which mirror did it fall?" Silence answered. Hale gave Avery instructions. The fireplace grate in the study was to be sifted, the trash inspected, nothing discarded. As Avery worked, Hale examined the fractured frame more closely. Near the hinge point, faint scoring marks ran along the inner edge. Someone had weakened the glass in advance. Preparation, not panic. Claire was still standing there. "You managed the renovations," Hale said, "including the mirrors." Her chin lifted. "Mrs. Rowe trusted me, and you knew exactly how they worked." A constable entered with a small tin. Inside lay charred fragments of paper, typed. Margins intact enough to show spacing, and a penciled note in the corner. "Tuesday, 11:30. Hale looked at Calder. "Your typewriter will be compared." Calder's composure tightened. "You're implying—" "I'm observing," Hale said. "Someone tried to burn something after the death. That suggests fear." Claire's breathing had grown shallow. Hale turned to her sewing basket, brought in at his request. He sifted through ribbons and scraps until he found a jagged strip of violet silk. He placed it beside the ribbon from the mirror recess. A perfect match. Proof didn't shout. It aligned. "The dagger was meant to be found," Hale said quietly to Avery once the others were dismissed. "Placed where suspicion already lived. Then the necklace, never meant to be here at all." The room settled into uneasy stillness. Hale looked at the shattered mirror, truth finally cracking through illusion. Tomorrow he would force a reconstruction. And someone, unable to hide behind reflection any longer, would break with it. Morning returned to Raventon House without mercy. The fog had thinned, but not enough to soften the building's edges. Sunlight slipped through the tall windows at sharp angles, exposing dust, flaws, and the places no one had bothered to clean. Detective Marcus Hale arrived shortly before 10:45 a.m., carrying nothing new, only certainty. He ordered everyone still in the house to gather upstairs. The mirror room waited in partial repair. The shattered panel had been cleared away, leaving a jagged absence in the wall. What remained reflected unevenly now, imperfectly. Hale preferred it that way. Truth rarely arrived intact. Lord Edward Rowe stood near the door, shoulders heavy, face drawn tight by sleeplessness. Claire Whitmore stood rigidly by the vanity, hands folded, spine straight. Jonathan Calder lingered near the window, gloved hand tucked into his jacket. Evan Mercer hovered uncertainly near the far wall, as if afraid of his own reflection. Hale took position where Vivian Rowe had fallen. "This isn't a trial," he said calmly. "It's a correction." He gestured to the mirrors. "These walls don't show what happened. They show what was convenient to see." No one spoke. At 7:32 a.m., Mrs. Rowe sent her maid away. She did that intentionally. She had just discovered something: theft, betrayal, or both. She expected confrontation, not violence. Hale stepped aside, allowing the light to strike the vanity. The killer entered quietly. No forced door. No raised voice. Someone Mrs. Rowe trusted enough not to scream. His eyes moved, not to the men, but to Claire. "You supervised the installation of these mirrors," Hale continued. "You approved the movable panel. You knew the angles. You knew how a person could stand here." He stepped sideways into the narrow space revealed by the missing panel and still appear absent. Claire's jaw tightened. The wound was delivered at chest height, controlled, close. A dagger balanced for a left hand. Calder shifted. Mercer swallowed. "You hid the weapon behind the mirror you'd used before, not in panic, in habit. You intended to retrieve it later." Claire's voice came out brittle. "This is speculation." "No," Hale said. It's geometry. He turned slightly, demonstrating. From the door, the mirror shows only the victim. Even after she's fallen, the reflection lies. Someone could pass the doorway and swear she was still standing. He paused. Unless you knew better, silence thickened. You wrote the anonymous letters, Hale went on. Typed, cruel, designed to isolate her. We recovered fragments from the study grate. The ribbon matches your machine. Claire's breath faltered once. You told yourself it was pressure, fear, that she'd ruin you, that she was careless with men, money, power. Lord Rose stiffened, but Hale didn't look at him. When she threatened to remove you from her affairs, from her life, you panicked. You went to her room, you argued, she laughed. Claire's eyes flicked upward to her reflection, then to another, then another. I didn't mean to, she whispered. You struck once, Hale said, too hard, too sure. The words collapsed the room. Claire's hands trembled now. I saw myself do it, she said faintly, in the mirrors like it wasn't me. Hale closed his notebook. It was you, he said. And the mirrors didn't lie, they just helped you hide. Sergeant Avery stepped forward. Claire did not resist. As she was led away, her reflection fractured and thinned, leaving only empty glass behind. The room exhaled. Hale remained a moment longer, alone with the angles, the light, the truth finally aligned. Illusion had failed, and the mirrors at last were honest. Ravenport House did not relax after the arrest. If anything, it grew heavier, as if the walls themselves were recalculating what they were allowed to remember. The mirrors remained uncovered, imperfect now, their reflections broken just enough to feel honest. Detective Marcus Hale stayed, not because he doubted the confession, but because confessions rarely ended stories cleanly. He worked from the study. The fire grate had been emptied and cataloged. The charred paper fragments lay sealed in evidence sleeves on the desk beside a magnifying lamp. Hale examined them again, slow and methodical, typed letters, anonymous, accusatory, carefully spaced, not rage, control. Jonathan Calder sat opposite him, posture stiff, professionalism worn thin around the edges. You destroyed part of the amended will, Hale said. Not all of it, just enough. Calder's jaw flexed. I was protecting my client. Which one? Hale asked calmly. Calder said nothing. The new draft removed you as executor, Hale continued. Transferred authority to an independent trust officer. Reduced your discretionary power. That frightened you. I acted after her death, Calder replied. Not before. True, Hale said. Which is why you're not charged with murder. Calder looked up sharply. You attempted to suppress evidence, Hale went on. You altered the paper trail. You hoped the death would be ruled domestic, impulsive, tragic, something that wouldn't invite audits. Calder exhaled through his nose. I misjudged you. You misjudged mirrors, Hale replied. They record without loyalty. Down the hall, Edward Rowe stood alone in the breakfast room, staring out at the garden he hadn't stepped into in years. Hale joined him briefly. She was afraid, Rowe said. I didn't see it. She hid it well, Hale answered. From everyone except the person closest to her. Rowe nodded once. No defense. No absolution requested. Upstairs, Hale returned to the mirror room one final time. He walked the path again, from door to vanity, from panel to shadow. He positioned himself exactly where Claire Whitmore would have stood. The angle worked. Too well. From the hallway, Vivian Rowe would have appeared upright in reflection even after falling. Anyone passing could swear she was alive. That illusion had bought minutes. Minutes were everything. Hale noticed something he hadn't before. On the inner lip of the vanity drawer, a faint indentation. Fabric abrasion. He opened it carefully. Inside lay nothing except a trace of red dust, polishing compound. The ruby necklace had been wiped clean here before being removed, not stolen in panic, prepared, which meant one thing. The necklace had not left the house that morning. Hale moved quickly. The laundry room sat quiet, unused. He checked beneath the folding table, then the storage cabinet. Nothing. Finally, he went to the servants' stairwell. Behind a loose baseboard near the landing, wrapped in a cleaning cloth, lay the ruby necklace, stones dulled with residue, clasps intact, hidden in transit, never meant to be kept, only meant to mislead. By the time Hale logged the final evidence, dusk had begun to pull at the windows again. The case was solved, but the motive, vanity sharpened by fear, lingered in the air like perfume long after its wearer was gone. Tomorrow the house would empty. One more reflection would remain to be faced. Ravenport House emptied without ceremony. There were no raised voices, no final arguments, no desperate pleas echoing through the halls. Just paperwork, quiet footsteps, and doors closing with careful restraint. By late afternoon, the guests were gone. Only the staff remained, moving through rooms that no longer felt owned by anyone. Detective Marcus Hale stood alone in the mirror room, the final report folded neatly inside his coat. The mirrors reflected less now. One panel was missing entirely, exposing bare wall where illusion once lived. Another carried a thin fracture that caught the light and bent it away, distorting everything it touched. The room no longer pretended to be infinite. It had boundaries. So did the truth. Claire Whitmore's confession had held under pressure, under repetition, under silence. Left-handed strike, familiarity with the concealed hinge, knowledge of timing and angles. Every detail aligned once the illusion collapsed. No last-minute revelations, no theatrical twists, just patience, method, and geometry. Hale replayed the final morning one last time. Vivian Rowe had discovered the necklace earlier than Claire anticipated. Not yet stolen, staged. Removed, cleaned, hidden briefly. Proof that something was wrong inside her own house. She sent the maid away deliberately. She wanted privacy. She wanted control of the conversation that followed. Claire entered through the side corridor, the one invisible in the dominant reflection. Words were exchanged. Accusations sharpened. The moment tipped. The dagger had never been decorative. It was contingency. Fear made practical decisions. The strike was fast. The mirrors preserved the lie just long enough. Minutes passed before anyone understood that Vivian Rowe was no longer standing. That delay was the murder. Everything after, the hidden blade, the fractured panel, the planted suggestion of theft, was logistics. Damage control performed by someone who believed preparation could replace consequence. Hale moved to the vanity and closed the drawer where faint traces of polishing compound still lingered. The ruby necklace was already logged, sealed, and transported. Jonathan Calder would answer for obstruction. Edward Rowe would inherit a house that now felt hostile and hollow. The case was closed. Still, Hale lingered. He studied his reflection, singular now, no longer multiplied into false witnesses. People believed mirrors revealed truth. They didn't. They revealed confidence. The confidence to believe you were unseen. The confidence to act without witnesses. The confidence to mistake reflection for cover. Hale turned off the last lamp. The room dimmed, reflections dissolving into dark, useless glass. Without light, the mirrors became what they had always been. Surfaces. Nothing more. He left Raventon House as evening settled over the street, the door closing softly behind him. No reporters waited. No crowd gathered. Once explained, tragedy lost its spectacle. Hale paused at the curb and looked back at the upper windows. Nothing moved. No shadows. No watchers. The file would be archived under a neutral title. No poetry. No flourish. Just motive, method, and opportunity. But Hale would remember it differently. As a reminder that vanity does not always crave admiration. Sometimes it craves control. And sometimes it craves the ability to disappear. If you stayed with this case to the end, drop a like and subscribe and tell me. Do you think the mirrors revealed the crime or made it possible?